Here we are with the 8th episode of Ember in the Dark, and today we're going to dig into a little different perspective. We've been talking more so about navigating these denser, challenging emotions, and what I've come to realize in my journey that a piece of my puzzle that I haven't integrated is actually learning to love myself. And so that's what we're going to talk about is how do we start to love ourselves even though we feel all these denser, challenging emotions, right? And so if this resonates with you, keep listening, keep watching, and we'll catch you on the other side. Welcome back to the 8th episode of Ember in the Dark. I am your host, Mike Warren, and today we are digging into loving ourselves and ultimately the concept, of loving ourselves through hell, even if we feel that we've put ourselves there, right? And this can be a very challenging piece to the puzzle, especially if we've been faced with a lot of these deeper, denser, darker emotional pieces within ourselves and made some choices and ultimately weren't the best choice now that we have the awareness looking back at it, right? And so I know for me, a lot of what I'm talking about in these episodes is my own personal experience. That's where I heavily speak from, simply because that's all I can speak from in regards to supporting you. And I know for me, this has been a challenge in bringing a sense of loving myself and compassion and grace to myself in this challenge, because there was a heavy part in the story that I made up that I don't deserve it. The story that I, somewhere along the line let God down. I've been abandoned and shunned, been rejected by God. And so because of that, therefore, I don't deserve any compassion or love. Ultimately, what I can think of is like the biggest form of low self-worth, low self-esteem, and lack of self-care, self-love, self-compassion. And as I've been going through this journey and recognizing and getting a little bit of wiggle room, I'm starting to see that the piece that I'm missing is starting to add in this layer of self-care, which is a form of self-love, right? And it can be challenging. I completely get and understand where if we're in a position where we feel that, we messed up, we made a choice and we acted it out and we look back and we see it as like a really big mistake. It can be challenging to feel that we deserve a form of self-love or self-care. However, it is the source. We are the source of it. It starts with us. Able to love ourselves, we are therefore unable to love others, right? And part of this comes into nervous system regulation. And so a lot of the flare-ups, as I call them, in regards to those emotional waves that come and make things a little turbulent in your life, I'm not talking about the external events. Those are just the things that are stirring up the water and the muck that's kind of in the system already. When those turbulent times come emotionally, it can be challenging in those times to slow down and pause and start giving ourselves some compassion. However, going to the nervous system, that's where your nervous system is taking a beating in those spaces. And what I started recognizing when I started taking on my nervous system and recognizing that I've been in fight or flight for a long period of time, and it having flipped to the fawn or freeze state, I had to really step into self-compassion, self-care, which felt extremely odd and different for me. Like that is something I've never really done for myself in my life. I just kind of did things and not from a perspective of taking care of me because I care about me. And so when I started to really play this game of, looking at the nervous system and doing actions and movements and practices that support the nervous system in down regulating and switching from sympathetic to parasympathetic, your rest and digest, I actually got a little bit more space within myself that I'm noticing for me personally. The waves, they don't hit me the same. They're not coming every other day. They're not lasting for weeks on end. And because there's space between them where, I can go 2, 3, 4 weeks without really being hit by a wave, that if a wave comes, I can really take a look at what did I do differently this weekend that caused this wave to come on versus the previous weekends, where in the past it was so constant. It's like I couldn't put my finger on anything. And one of the things I recognize that I started to do that has really started to support is begin to honor myself and the nervous system, which is a form of self-care, which equates to self-love. And so in this space, this is where I started to recognize that it's the piece that I've been missing, is learning to love myself where I am at, regardless of what's going on. It needs to start there. And I very rarely use the term need, because I don't want to, like, nobody needs anything in my firm belief. It's more about, an opportunity to look into, to choose into, etc. However, in this case, it's something that I recognize. It is a necessity. It is a need. And we are the ones that are, if we're in this challenging period of our life, we got to start acting out with self-love, even though we feel like we don't deserve it. We don't feel like we can do it. We don't feel like we have the energy, etc. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not going to be an overnight thing that happens. You do it today and you're seeing great results tomorrow. It's creating a new practice for yourself. And so in this purging process of what I believe is happening for a lot of individuals right now, and like I've spoken about in my previous episodes, of this denser energies, these denser emotions are coming to the surface to be let go, released, purged out of the system. There is an old identity that was attached to the behaviors, the emotions, the thought patterns, the habits, all of it that associated with that package of those denser emotions. And for me, showing self-love is out of my box. That's outside of my comfort zone. And so it's really developing a newer habit with myself such that I am acknowledging, appreciating, and learning to love myself such that I'm giving myself the things that I need to be able to come into the world more effectively. And as I started to take this on, it started with nibbles. It wasn't big bites. It was very small little things, for example, somatic healing that I would do, 10 minutes a day. That was my capacity at the time. And so what I had recognized in my research of the nervous system and the body and health, navigating this dark space that I've been in, is your capacity to hold anything, ideas, perspectives, beliefs, money, relationships, health, all of it is tied to your nervous system. Your nervous system is basically the capacitor that determines how much you can hold, how much stress you can handle. And so you may be having big ideas and big things that you want to take on, and yet your capacity to be responsible for those things isn't necessarily there. And so we got to start at reprogramming and reintegrating the nervous system into the parasympathetic side. And that comes through self-care and compassion and self-love. And so what this means for you is when those turbulent times come up, like I spoke about in the last episode, instead of beating yourself up or judging yourself for it, go spend time in the emotion and allow it to be there. And those emotions will start to bubble and you will feel them release. That part's hard. However, that is a form of self-care and self-compassion, self-love. Because when we go to a place of beat up, I shouldn't be feeling this, I don't like this, where did I do wrong? I'm tired of this, I hate this, my life sucks, blah, 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 blah. We keep playing those stories out. We're just beating ourselves up and our self-esteem, and our nervous system is taking a hit. So now is the time to really slow things down in a way for you. I'm not saying slow down at work, slow down in relationships, slow down at the gym. I'm not saying in that regard. I'm talking about the internal process of being so on top of ourselves that it's a detriment to our health. And so taking the time to really give self-care and self-love to you. That might be waking up a little bit earlier and doing a morning practice. Instead of waking up, going to your phone right away, maybe it's to go for a walk outside, get some sunlight on the body, in your eyes. And that might be something as simple as waking up a little earlier and making your favorite cup of coffee, if you enjoy coffee, for example. If you're someone that's been wanting to get to the gym, however, you just feel like you do not have the capacity or the energy to get there, I get it. I understand. So instead of beating yourself up where you told yourself, today's the day I'm getting to the gym, instead of doing that, let's put that on the shelf for right now, because maybe your nervous system isn't able to handle the capacity to take the gym on. However, let's not do nothing either. So maybe we find a happy medium. Maybe it's a form of stretching at home, yoga, maybe, like I said, going for walks, some fascial maneuvers, something like that. That is in between full on gym, lifting heavy, pushing yourself to the max, and doing absolutely nothing. Like, I've actually been in the gym with my son. He'll be 14 in about 2 weeks time, 3 weeks time. And, I was training with him in the gym. Like, for me, where I've been, me getting into the gym is something that I wanted to do. However, I just have never had the energy, the capacity. There was a desire, yet there was just no oomph behind myself getting there. And the fact that I was able to do this, and this was maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, was huge. Like, I was able to really recognize that I've come a long way. And one of the biggest things that have supported me with this is through the self-love aspect. And it's interesting because the piece that I found that was missing is where we're, like I said, is we're retraining the nervous system. And one of the things to do that is, doing the things, even though we don't have the joy or feeling of excitement of the thing. And what I mean by that is, when the nervous system has been firing in fight or flight for so long, and for those that have been experiencing these challenging experiences with the denser emotions, the shame, guilt, regret, the fears, the anxieties, all of that, that is a hit on the nervous system. And the nervous system will tend to tighten up and shut down. And when that happens, our capacity to experience life at its fullest also dims and shuts down. Once that's kind of been in place for a period of time, your nervous system is constantly on the lookout for threats. You're in the mall and you kind of get an anxiety hit and you're like, I'm not able to be here. I got to get out. It's too overwhelming and stimulating for your nervous system, and it's already at max, that it pushes you over the edge and it's like, shut down. I got to get out of here. And so what I found that worked for me is doing things that I used to enjoy, even though I don't really enjoy them now, or I don't feel the joy of them. For example, I love bike riding. That's something that I did growing up a lot of the times with my friends, is I'd ride bikes around all day, go around everywhere. And so just going on a bike ride, even though I didn't feel the joy of it, I would still get on the bike and just go do the bike ride. Okay. And the reason for this is it allows your nervous system to start to recognize things are safe again. Okay. And what I mean by that is, if we continue to just lie around and do nothing, right? Going back to the analogy of going to the gym and, being in the gym 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, and absolutely doing nothing, maybe going to the gym 2 hours a day is way out of the context for you. However, you sitting around doing nothing, what that does for your nervous system is it reaffirms there's a threat. So it stays locked in to that fight or flight or sympathetic side of your nervous system. And so what we start doing is we got to start stepping out of it. And it's baby bites at a time, little baby steps you're stepping out of, such that you aren't overwhelming the nervous system, that it shuts down completely. And it's kind of like the nervous system is still testing the waters of, is it safe? Am I going to be attacked? Am I going to shut down again? And so you take a little step out. So like I said, maybe you start with stretching, moving your body. I've done this many times, and, I've committed and I've fallen off the commitment where I said I was going to do it, every day, and then I miss a day. That's not working. Stop it. However, when I step back and look at the whole picture, I guess the big picture over the years, and especially the last 6 to 8 months, I recognize that all those little things that I was doing has actually been giving me the space for my nervous system to regulate a little bit more. Then I can handle a little bit more. Now I'm getting back into the gym a little bit, right? Like it's not something that I'm able to force. However, being able to take those baby steps such that the nervous system recognizes, okay, bike riding is not going to kill me, because when it's fired up, it is going to think everything is a threat. And when you start adding those little things and you're doing those things again, maybe skateboarding is your thing or painting is your thing, and you feel like you haven't been a good painter or you're not able to get behind it. Go do those things, even though you don't feel the joy or the excitement that those things bring to you, because on one side of it, your nervous system is shut down so much from the challenges and the experience of life and those denser emotions that it's limiting your range of emotion. And so we got to go outside of the feeling of that experience and start doing the things regardless of us and being challenged in those denser emotional states, such that your nervous system recognizes, oh, painting is not a threat anymore. So then you start to paint and it slowly opens up and realizes it's safe to move again. And then you take another step, and it's safe to move again and further. And then eventually your nervous system becomes regulated once more, and you can be able to expand your experience and handle and have the capacity to handle what life throws at you. Okay. And that is a form of self-love, right? That is a form of self-care, is taking those steps. Now, when those waves hit, the anxiety, the depression, and it feels like you're in that drowning place and you're like, you don't know left from right, up from down. Those are the times where I spoke about in the last video, where you want to take a moment with yourself, maybe go to your office, your bedroom, just let, if you got family around, let them know you're going to take some time for yourself and go be with the emotions to allow them to move and release. And once they clear up, you have a little bit more energy. You take that little bit of energy and apply it to taking one more step in an area that, you find joy in, or you may not find it currently, however, in the past you've had. And by doing that, you're reprogramming the nervous system that it's safe to experience life again. And that's what has worked for me. So one of the areas where I've noticed a big shift is I love supporting individuals and coaching them through mindset, personal development. And so I've been volunteering with the program as a coach. And in that program, I've recognized that even though there's days where I'm challenged and I'm struggling, I still got to show up for these people that I'm coaching. That was my commitment. And by doing that, I'm still stretching myself in an arena that I'm comfortable in. I'm very competent in this arena. Yet I'm stretching myself to get my nervous system to remember that it's okay. There's not a big threat out there, right? So really take this time to start to learn and begin to create a new relationship with yourself. Like I said in the last episode, you're not broken. There's nothing to quote unquote fix. If we continue to keep that mindset that there's something wrong with ourselves, there's something broken with ourselves, then unfortunately we're going to be chasing more and more and more and more things to find ourselves broken or fixing, that we got to eventually will always be in a place of searching. And so right now it's the practice of learning to love yourself with where you are, even if you feel you put yourself there and you don't deserve it. Because the truth of the matter is, again, you exist for a reason. God, universe, spirit, source, whatever that is for you, didn't create you as a mistake. Like creation, it's through chaos. It's very chaotic. However, at the same time, it's very purposeful. And so by you feeling that you made a mistake and you're a mistake and having those types of thoughts, it's basically saying you know better than source, God, creation, whatever that is for you. You know better than. And maybe, just maybe, you're in this position right now to learn to create a different relationship with yourself such that you experience a different perspective of yourself. This is bringing the light into the dark, bringing that love and that compassion to the shunned aspects of ourselves. Like the example that I used of a young child looking to get attention in my last episode. We can come at it from a space of, you're a horrible child, you're bad, you don't do that, go to your room. Or we can come with love and compassion and be like, what is it that you need right now? What is it that why are you doing that? Well, I want to hang out with you. Okay, well, I'm busy. Can we, do this in 10 minutes or whatever? You can open up the door. It's an expansive conversation versus you did this wrong, you're bad, whatever, go to your room. That's a closing, shutting down, right? And so maybe right now is the time for you to start really leaning in on loving yourself, even though you may not feel it. such that you start creating a new habit where it becomes something that you do daily that just supports you in feeling good about who you are. And through that experience, you will release those heavier, denser emotions such that you start to elevate, like I said in my previous episode of the under the water with the anchors and the musical scale, you start to increase that vibrational experience of life. So with that being said, I appreciate you tuning in. Again, the link is in my bio for all my episodes if you haven't caught up on all of them. And if you have, please share with those that you feel this would support and resonate with. And always, always, always remember, no matter how dark it may seem to get, even the smallest of embers can light your path. Thank you for listening.